Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum and I'm here today in Thun, Switzerland visiting B&T, and we're taking a look today at their GHM 9mm pistol caliber carbine. Now this video is going to be best understood if you've seen a couple of my previous videos, so you might want to check out the KH9 video and the APC9 video if you haven't seen them before. But I'll do my best to explain this even if you haven't seen those. Now, the place where the story of the GHM here begins, and by the way, we'll touch on what GHM stands for. B&T loves their three-letter model designations, but this starts with a different B&T carbine, and it was called the P26. It was intended to be basically an entry model 9mm pistol caliber carbine or submachine gun for police and law enforcement. P26, it was named after sort of the shadowy Swiss stay-behind guerrilla organization that, well, was disbanded in some scandal in 1990 or 1991, but that's a really cool story on its own. Anyway, B&T names their entry model submachine gun PCC after the P26, but then while they're still working on it, before they actually bring it to market, they get interest from another major firearms manufacturer who's looking to get into the 9mm PCC business and wants basically skip the line pass by buying someone else's project. So B&T sells that whole project to another company, and then they're left in sort of an Armalite situation. You know, Armalite had all of the AR-15 patents and tooling, and like that was their project, and then they sold the whole thing to Colt, and then they're back needing a rifle to sell to people. And they're like, oh, well, I guess now we have to design something new to replace the one that we sold to Colt. Well, for B&T, that new product is the GHM. So what they do here fundamentally is they take their APC grip assembly, fire control assembly, magazine well assembly, and they pair it with the same extrusion that they had used on the KH-9 guns. The idea here is to create a gun with as low a manufacturing cost as possible by combining existing elements. So there's minimal engineering cost, minimal redesign cost. All materials are the same things that they're already using. It's as efficient a design as possible. So let's take a closer look at this, and I'll show you what carried over from pre-existing guns and what they did a little bit differently in the GHM. All right, so let's start here. We'll pull the magazine out. Standard magazines here are APC magazines, but of course this does use exactly the same fire control group as the APC, which means you can get different magazine versions of it. So we go ahead and pull this off. Now, all right, you may have noticed that I was able to take the grip assembly off without actually removing the buttstock, and that's because there are two rear disassembly pins here. Now, marketing will tell you that that is so that you can take this off to clean it or change it or something without having to fully disassemble the gun. But the reality is actually, I think, much more interesting. The reality is we have an engineering dilemma here. So this is an APC-9, same grip assembly. This is the GHM-9. The APC has a taller receiver extrusion than this. So the bolt in the APC can be about this long and have enough mass to cycle properly. And then there's, of course, the recoil buffer, hydraulic buffer in the stock to help tame the actual felt recoil impulse. Now, Ruger really wanted to build this gun the same way so that this rear pin held the stock in place and you just had one pin like on the APC. The problem is, because this receiver profile extrusion is substantially smaller, you don't have nearly as much available space to make up the mass required for the bolt to operate at, well, to be heavy enough to operate correctly. So one option would be to make the entire bolt out of tungsten or something. That's not really practical. The other option was to increase the mass of the bolt. But by making it longer, you needed a little more space in the receiver, which dictates extending the receiver, and then it's longer than the grip frame right there, and so you have to have a second pin attaching the stock assembly. Now, they opted to go with the same hydraulic buffer on this as on the APC, which I think is really cool. That definitely tames the recoil on it, makes it a nicer shooting gun. But no buffer there, and that's because pull the springs out, pull the charging handle out. The buffer was put on the back of the bolt, not on the stock. What this does is basically mean that the weight of the buffer, you sort of get to double dip on. The weight of the buffer acts as mass for the bolt itself. If it were mounted to the stock, it's sort of wasted mass that's not contributing to, well, to delaying the action opening. So that's kind of a cool system there. All right, I said I would tell you what GHM stands for, and when we pull the stock off, we can actually see it engraved right here on the bottom of the gun. That is a GrassHopper Mouse, which is one of few, if possibly the only, creature out there that makes a regular diet of eating scorpions without getting poisoned by them. And I have no idea why they would have engraved that on the bottom of a 9mm PCC. I'm sure it has some meaning, but it's a total mystery. All right, so there's the GHM fully disassembled. It's a nice, simple gun. There are a number of elements here that are specifically lower cost options than you have in the APC-9. You can see the charging, the recoil springs are non-captive. It's a real simple guide rod assembly there. The stocks are a little bit simpler. This has a number of modular features to it, but the options list really isn't as comprehensive as on the APC-9, which has about, roughly speaking, 8 gajillion different configurations that you can build it in. Now, there are some modularity options here. So one of them is that in addition to the side folding stock, you can also do a collapsing stock, but those are really your only 2 stock options. The guns are available using the APC magazines. That's these guys in 9mm. They do also make a .45 caliber version, and you can get this with the Glock magazine lower in 9mm as well. And then the most exotic different model is the SD version, which has a different handguard up here to accommodate a telescoping suppressor. Now, this is a reduced blowback suppressor of course, B&T's design. We do have a ported barrel. There you go. You can see the barrel ports are right back there. And then the suppressor for this is sort of a potato masher kind of design, where the telescoping section is relatively thin diameter, and then you have a much larger section at the front with basically this is a regular suppressor in the center that then has an extra sleeve around the outside to act as a gas bypass. This is the same sort of idea that others would call, say, flow-through. Just it reduces the back pressure in the gun, which means it reduces the amount of gas coming out the ejection port at the shooter and just generally makes it a lot more pleasant to shoot. Last but not least, there are 5 different barrel lengths to choose from. This is the 6.9 inch. It's the standard. You can also get a C model, which is 4.3 inch. The extended model is 8.9 inch, and then there's also a 16 inch to be not a pistol or short-barreled rifle, and there's an 18-inch version for the Canadians who are stuck with that because of their laws. So overall, what you have here is sort of the entry-level, less expensive pattern of PCC from B&T in Switzerland. All right, well, there you go, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed getting a chance to take a look at the GHM. Hopefully this video and the others here at B&T have helped to explain exactly what some of these very similar sounding and often similar looking carbines have that are in common and that are different with each other. So let me know down in the comments. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.